the Eucharistic miracle of sight in Egypt between the 3rd and the 5th century. Here in this small town of Sight, where Christianity was practiced by old monks who followed Saint Anthony the Abbot. As you know, geographically, Egypt is a desert region. And so there was this monk who did not really believe in the presence of Jesus in the consecrated bread and wine at Mass. At times he would remark saying that the bread and wine is just a symbol of Jesus and not really Jesus. His fellow monks heard him and knew that this was not malice. However, it was just sheer lack of information and lack of knowledge of the faith. They prayed that this monk would be revealed with the real presence of Jesus. And what happened in the next few days at Sunday Mass was unbelievable. The Eucharist was celebrated, the bread and wine was being consecrated. And what happened next was that the bread turned into infant Jesus, and there was an angel that pierced the heart of the infant Jesus, that shed blood, and that wine was blood. And when this monk saw this, he believed that there was evidence, there was bread that was the body of Christ, and the wine was the blood of Christ. When he confirmed to himself that, yes, Lord, it's you who are present at the Eucharist, infant Jesus turned back into the bread, and the blood turned back into wine. It's very simple. We ought to believe that there is Christ truly present at Mass and in the bread and wine consecrated at the Eucharist. Thank you.
The Eucharistic miracle of Bordeaux. The Eucharistic miracle of Bordeaux is closely connected to the community founded in 1820 by the Venerable Father Pierre Noël. This community is still active even today, especially in Asia and Africa. The miracle occurred 20 months after the foundation of the community in their church of Saint Eulalia in Rue Mazarin. Jesus appeared in the host immediately after Abbot Delors, who was that day substituting for Father Noël in the liturgical celebrations, gave the benediction with the Blessed Sacrament. The great number of faithful were able to contemplate for more than 20 minutes the apparition Jesus had imprinted in the host exposed for public adoration. In addition to this, someone also testified to have heard Jesus saying, "I am who he is." This miracle was later approved by the ecclesiastical authorities, among whom the Archbishop of Bordeaux was present. Even today, it is possible to visit the chapel of the miracle and venerate the precious relic of the monstrance of the apparition.
Eucharistic miracle of Augsburg in Germany, 1194. The Eucharistic miracle of Augsburg is known locally as Wunderbar Seelen, Guts, the miracle is good. It is described in numerous books and historical documents that can be consulted in the Civic State Library of Augsburg. A stolen host was transformed into bleeding flesh. In the course of the centuries, several analyses were completed of the holy peace that have always confirmed that human flesh and blood are present. Today, the convent of the Heilig Kruis, Holy Cross, is taken care by the Dominican fathers. In those days, it was very difficult to find tabernacles in the church so as to be able to practice Eucharistic worship. 5 years passed, and on the 11th of May 1199, the woman, tormented by remorse, confessed to the superior of the convent of the Heilige Cross, Father Berthold, who had her to bring the host back. The priest opened up the wax covering that enclosed the host and saw that it was transformed into bleeding flesh. The host appeared divided into two parts, connected together by the thin threads of the bleeding flesh. Father Berthold went immediately to the bishop of the city. He in turn ordered that the miraculous host be transferred, accompanied by the clergy and by the people, into the cathedral and exhibited in the Astorium of the crystal for public worship. The miracle continued. The host began to grow and to swell up, and this phenomenon lasted before the eyes of all from Easter Sunday until the feast of Saint John the Baptist. The host was brought back near the convent of Heilige Cross and established that in memory of such a memorable and extraordinary event. In 1200, Count Rechber donated to the Augustine Fathers a rectangular chest of silver with an opening in the front for the placement of the host of the miracle. Besides the Eucharistic miracle, other extraordinary incidents took place, such as the apparition about the host of baby Jesus, dressed in white, with radiant face and his forehead encircled with a crown of gold, or in another case, the bleeding of the crucifix of the church, or the apparition of Jesus blessing the assembly of worshippers.
The Eucharistic miracle of Bois-Seigneur-Isaac in Belgium. In 1405, on Tuesday just before the Pentecost, a man named John from Heldenberg received 3 visions from the Lord. He saw the wounded Lord, and during the 3rd vision, the Lord ordered him to go to the chapel of Isaac, and he would see him there. At that very moment, the Lord also spoke to the parish priest, asking him to say Mass in the chapel of Isaac. The parish priest summoned the people the next day, and he offered Mass. As he was offering the Mass, John was present over there. During the time of consecration, he saw in the corporal a host consecrated during the preceding Tuesday. He tried to touch the host, and the host and the Eucharist clung to the corporal, and the Eucharist started bleeding. The parish priest was frightened and turned white. John observed it and came up to the priest and told him, "It is a miracle from the Lord. Do not be afraid." The corporal was kept for a week, and it continued to bleed. The bishop of that area was summoned, and the bishop kept the corporal with him for 2 years and gathered testimony and tried to wash the stain over the corporal, but the corporal was as it was. In 1410, the bishop allowed people to visit the host, and 40 days indulgence was given to the people who visited it. In 1413, the relic was venerated, and 1414, every year, the procession started taking place. Till this date, every year, the procession takes place. This reminds us that every time we come to the Eucharist, we come to experience the passion, the death, and resurrection of the Lord. As we come to the Eucharist, let us be aware of the presence of God, Jesus in our midst during the time of consecration.
Eucharistic miracle of Betania. It was on December the 8th, 1991, Father O.T. Oza Aristizabal, who was celebrating midnight mass at the shrine of Marian Shrine of Finca, Betania, located at Cuba, Venezuela, found that the host was bleeding during the consecration. Father O.T., who was a chaplain of the shrine, after having consumed one of the pieces of the large host, which he had divided into 4 parts, found a red stain on one of the pieces of the host. A red substance began to emanate from it. In a similar manner, just as blood escapes from a wound. After Mass, he preserved the host in the sacristy of the shrine. The next day in the morning at around 6 a.m., blood continued to flow and later it dried. Some special studies were requested by the then Bishop of Los Teques, Reverend Ricardo, and it was confirmed that the blood was human. It belonged to the blood group AB positive, and it was very much similar to the cloth of the Shroud of Turin. This miraculous host is preserved in the city of Las Teques at the convent of the Augustinian Recollects Nuns of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and it is permanently exposed for the adoration of the faithful. Many prodigious events have taken place regarding this miraculous host, and one incident that stands out is that it occurred to a young American, Daniel Safford, who saw the miraculous host pulsating like a heart for about 30 seconds, and then later it returned to normal. He was able to film this part of the miracle in his video camera.